Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of my Industry Insider interview series. And before I bring on my next guest, just like to always tell people, if you'd like to explore and learn a little bit more about what TalkShop is and the programs that I offer to both high school and college students, please feel free to reach out. The information will be on your screen shortly. I'm happy to have any exploratory conversations that you'd like to share. Commercial aside, I'd like to bring Rocky Harris in. Rocky, thanks for taking some time and sharing your insight to college students. Would you please introduce yourself so I don't promote or demote you, your role and who you do it with?
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Rocky Harris, CEO of USA Triathlon.
Got it. So you've been there for a while. You've obviously got a lot of industry experience. What we talk about here on these interview series is really all about the life skill of how to have more conversations. And in this case specifically, how it can play into the networking process, how it can play into the interview process. Now, what I'd like to start is just maybe ask you this kind of a little softball question is when during your career, maybe it was somewhere in high school, college, or fresh out of college, did you realize that the skill of being able to talk to a wide variety of people regarding a wide variety of topics was important?
Yeah, for me, it started really early. My dad was a football coach growing up at an inner city high school. And so, what he showed me was that it's really important to be able to engage and connect with people from all walks of life and figuring out what really motivates them and trying to tap into that motivation or inspiration or passion for them. And so I really just applied that through my life. I grew up in, I'd say a lower middle class neighborhood. And I knew that my natural network wasn't going to get me anywhere. So I had to be a little bit more intentional than most people with trying to connect with people who I felt like that would give me an opportunity in business at some point. So when I was in college, I started really considering what career I wanted. And I think for me, I really wanted to follow my passion and do something that I loved. So I started doing research in sports because that was my whole life growing up. And so for me, that became my passion, but I didn't know anyone. I had no connections at all. So I just started cold calling people, started sending, back then, not emails, I was writing letters. And what I found was that if you're authentic to who you are and you're genuine in your approach and you're not asking for something on the front end, because I really wasn't, I was just trying to meet people. People noticed that and could feel that. And I got a lot of responses, surprisingly. And I felt like it was because I approached them not asking for something other than to meet them, and because they're somebody that I would like to aspire to be someday. And so for me, that kind of started early on by watching my dad as a coach interact with others. And then I knew that my network was limited. And so I really had to take that extra step. And networking is totally uncomfortable for everybody, no matter how outgoing you are. So it's really important that you think a lot about who you are and what you stand for, and make sure that you articulate that as you're talking to people. Because what I've seen even through my career is I can see right through people when they are actually approaching me because they genuinely care and they want information, or because they just want to use me to get to something that they want. And it's very obvious. So I would just give that recommendation that you really are thoughtful before you approach somebody, get to know who they are. And most people across not just sports, all business, will give you a few minutes of their time or respond to you because we were all there. And the people who forgot about it, you don't want to work with them anyways.
No, that's a great point. And I always advise people, look, no one starts out in an expert or as an expert in any field. Everyone's been at the point that you are, meaning young woman or young man that's just embarking on the front end of your career. So I often tell people, just tee it up that way. Can you remember when you first started out, what that was like? I just want to, learn a little bit from you. And like you said, being genuine or authentic might be cliche, but absolutely spot on. And I'm not saying you're being cliche. I use those terms too. I want to ask you kind of a two-pronged question, because you covered and offered a lot of great insight just in that one question, which is helpful, and I appreciate that. When you were first breaking in, thinking about, like I just said, thinking back to when you were in that position to learn how to network and learn what to say to the right people or just to anyone, was there something that you can recall that helped, and maybe you got the feedback after the fact, that just kind of helped differentiate yourself from someone else that may have been in line for a networking or an internship opportunity? Anything that you did that you think helped?
Yeah, for networking, is really about not overstepping where I was at the time. So I never try to sell a bill of goods to somebody that I was something or I had some experience I didn't have. I was always just kind of overly honest about where I was as my career. I actually remember talking to you, Matt. You don't remember this because this is how life works. Is like when you're the younger person talking to somebody who is somebody who you aspire to be like, you remember the conversations, they might not. But I remember when I was an intern at the 49ers, I went and I was doing stats for you at the game. And I was asking you questions about, how you got here and your advice. And you essentially said, man, you're really outgoing. You got a really good personality. And I'd always kind of heard that, but what it made me do is like those little things gave me confidence. Like those little micro conversations I had gave me the confidence to have the next conversation. So what I would say to everyone out there is know that like anything in life, you're going to run into a lot of people who don't care about helping people. And then you're going to run into, those few people along the way that give you that positive feedback, and just let that positive feedback drive you. And let it fuel you. And I've seen that with me is it's like just the little nuggets, and accept them, embrace them, and get excited when people give you a little nugget of positivity. And so I think that really, like those types of conversations early on really showed me that I belonged. Because what happens with a lot of people is you can get in by networking and then to stay there, really you have to show that you belong. And not fitting in, but that you belong in that environment and that you're capable. And so that's really, for me, it was about getting in. And I knew once I got in that I could prove myself. And one piece of advice that I got early on is like, look, let the work do the talking for you, because I'm an outgoing person. I talk a lot naturally. And I remember early on in my career when I was in meetings, I would actually, and I don't know if this is great advice, but I would hold back when I didn't have the exact answer that I wanted to give, and big meetings or things like that. And I actually think that was a value based on my personality, because what I would normally do is interject too early, and no one wants a know-it-all coming in before they've earned the respect and trust. So I know there's a lot there, but for me, it was about taking those small moments of positivity from others and letting that fuel me, and then feeling like I belonged and showing I belong, but by really showing that I can listen and follow and learn rather than always have the answers. And so for me, it's kind of a two-pronged approach that really helped me feel like not only networking and getting in was important, but once I got there, allowing myself to understand that you might have to in a short-term change a little bit about what you do in order to elevate and to get the respect of people. Because to me, the worst thing you can do is either not say anything ever or talk too much as a person who's coming into the business. Go in there and let's see how other people learn, be a sponge. And that's what I try to do. And it's really challenging for me based on my personality. I'm a bit of a know-it-all. I like to have the answers, but I learned so much in those few years of just sitting there and watching these leaders really lead and seeing how it was done versus always having the answers.
There's some tremendous insight right there. A lot to unpack. I'm not going to, but I think anyone can decipher that. It's pretty straightforward. And I appreciate the anecdote. Man, I'm sure glad I wasn't a jerk back in that day that you actually worked with me, because that would have been a problem. But anyway, I appreciate the story. I want to just kind of take that question, but also move it now forward to, look, by title, there may be some that are just a little, I don't want to say nervous to approach anyone that's got the CEO title, but there probably are going to be those that are still going to reach out to you or to somehow find a way to get to you, just like I did. Mm-hmm. And the question I've got is, what do you see that could, what kind of advice or guidance would you give? You talked about just a moment ago how you networked and what your process was at that time. Looking at today's climate, pre-COVID or just the situation we're in right now, what advice and guidance would you give to today's college students that are about to embark on their career, whatever it might be, as it relates to how can they best brand themselves? I always tell people, look, you are your own brand. You need to protect it, and you need to put it out there in the most positive way possible. What guidance can you give today's students with that in mind?
Yeah, I think that, what you just said is great advice. But I do think it's standing out actually, and not in an overly aggressive way. So, one thing now when I get handwritten notes or letters, I notice them. That's somebody standing out versus a text, which is kind of odd, and an email. And I would say when you're approaching someone professionally, use professional language. I'm a very laid back, casual guy. But when somebody's approaching me, I expect them to show professionalism in their communication, not a casual friend like I would text my friend or my wife or somebody like that. So that's one piece of advice, is to stand out and then be professional when you do that. I think when you look at young people and where I believe they can stand out most today is showing that you're a utility player. Showing that you can do almost any job, that you're equipped, willing to do any job in the organization, because in a post-COVID world, there's not going to be as much specificity of roles. It's going to be bringing people in who can do lots of things, because things are going to continue to change over the next few years. So they need to know that you're adaptable, that you're somebody who is willing to take on more than what's even in the job description. And I think that that's much different than even 6 months ago. Now, that was always important for like an intern, but as you're trying to get a regular role in an organization, a full-time position, that to me has become even more important now than ever. When I hear people say that I'm really good at this one thing, it almost makes it so, well, that was really good 6 months ago. What I need is somebody who's really good at that, but can also learn almost any job that I have and is willing to do them. And I think that that's the future of the talent, and how we're going to evaluate talent is on people who are adaptable and are willing to do more than the job describes.
Sorry about that. Are we still with you?
Was it mine? Okay, sorry, I didn't know if I lost you.
Yeah. No, who knows? The gremlin just came up to bite us a little bit. That happens. I want to be, speaking of interruptions and tech glitches, hey, this is real and raw and unedited as it gets. You've been providing some terrific insight. I want to be mindful of your time, but there's just a few extra things I want to just get your input on. And you mentioned it, so it kind of spurred me is to look, everyone is trying to rise above the noise right now. They've got to find a way to differentiate themselves. And you mentioned, hey, being professional. Yeah, certainly. Whether you're a CEO like yourself or not, you certainly want to be professional. But what have you seen, whether it's been with you direct or maybe some colleagues within your organization, they said, hey, you know what? I just saw this candidate do something and it really kind of caught my attention. What captures Rocky Harris's attention as it relates to someone trying to get in touch with you to network, or if they're in with an interview? What captures your attention?
Yeah, it's really hard because it depends on the moment, right? And so it depends on what we're going through as an organization. So what I would say is people who really understand our organization's culture and did some research going into whatever conversation we have. I interview everybody who is a potential candidate finalist for our organization. And it's really funny when I ask them questions about our organization, they have no clue. And the ones that really stand out are like, look, I've seen what you guys have done over the last 3 years and the way that the culture has evolved, the way this has changed. And that really, it seems so basic, but I've noticed that the people who always connect their answers to our organization are the ones who stand out to me. And I think that once you get into an organization, I've kind of given this advice to a lot of people, is that, don't try to save the world initially. Go in there, put your head down and work. Become an expert at the job you've been hired to do, and be willing and show everybody you're willing to take on any work that they have. There's no job that's below you. And then when you become an expert in your job, you look up and you say to your boss or the people, how can I help? Right? I know my job. Everyone has confidence I can do my job. Now let me help the department. Let me help the department in different ways. And it gives you really good professional experience too. And then it offloads work from your boss, which is really important. And I think the third step, once you've done those two, is to really listen to the organizational priorities, the problems they're having, and try to solve them. And don't try to be the one to show everybody you're solving them. It's going there and say, I've really been thinking a lot about what you've been saying, and here are some things that I've been thinking about that could work. And I saw through my career, that was how I approached every job, from an intern all the way up to CEO, is at first just get in and do the job and prove yourself. Show them that you have the right attitude, the right work ethic, then look up and say, how can I, what can I do to offload work? And think about what keeps your boss awake at night, and try to take as much work away from your boss as you can, because then you become highly valuable and promotable, I found through my career. And then if you can help the organization in a big way, there's nothing more impactful. And what I love about the younger generation is they're so aspirational and want to change the world. The way you can change the world is by, I think, taking these steps. You got to take the first one before the second one, and the second one before the third one. But when you get to that space where you're changing an organization or a sport because of your assisting, that is meaningful. When I look back at my career, those are the moments I'm most proud of. But it did take that. And again, I remember when I was like a vice president, I'm like, I'm just going to go in and say, no, I took the exact same approach. Worked hard, proved myself, and then expanded. I didn't try to do it in reverse order, because that never works.
There's a lot, again, I could unpack each and every question, but I love the idea and the concept, because I share that as well, in terms of, I always let people know, find a way to be a problem solver, not a problem creator. People are going to want someone that can solve problems, not create them. So I know that was one of your messages amongst many that were right there.
One thing I have to say that actually,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Quick. Yeah, one of my favorite sayings to my staff when I was an early manager and trying to figure things out is, I had it up on my wall. It's called "Solutions, Not Problems." And what I ask my staff to do is to bring solutions to my office and not problems. So don't drop a problem in my lap. Drop a problem in my lap, but you need to bring your solution to the table. Because when you've already thought it through, you're an expert in your job. I'm not. I might have a broader view, but I need your perspective before I go and make a decision. Because what a lot of young bosses do that don't know enough, they don't ask enough questions. They want to have the answers. And I found that in myself as an early manager and boss, as I was trying to give the answers. And what I found when I started asking, well, what would you do? Tell me about how you would solve this. We might not do exactly what they wanted. I might shift and change it to something that made more sense to me. But I wouldn't have gotten to a better answer without their input as the expert. And I think that what I found through my career, most of my staff have come back to me and said, I hated that when you did that to me, but it was the best thing for my career, because I approached everything as, how can I solve it? I'm empowered to solve the problem on my own. I'm going to go to the boss to check in to make sure my solution is maybe the right one or on the right track. But I'm not going to go in and say, help me, boss. I can't figure this out, because everyone can figure out the problem. They can figure out the solutions to their own problems.
I truly appreciate that. Not to make this personal, I parent that way at times. Have my own 2 boys. It empowers them to say, hey, let's come up with some solutions together. Or how would you solve that? Let's come up with some ideas. Same thing at the workplace. So I can appreciate that, not from just a parental perspective, which is sort of like being a manager, right? Maybe a middle manager. I'm not sure. But anyway.
It builds confidence too, like you said, which I think is
without a doubt. Rocky Harris, CEO of USA Triathlon. I always offer an opportunity for anyone that comes on to promote anything they would like to promote, whether it's the website, any initiatives, a blog, if you'd like to have people connect with you, or maybe you want to say, Matt, thankfully, I don't want to do any of that, which is okay too, but I always like to give someone the opportunity.
Yeah, if you want to connect, just hit me on social media. I'm still Sun Devil Rocky from my old chief operating officer position at Arizona State University. Or you can email me, rocky.harris@usatriathlon.org. I actually respond to every email, so you don't have to worry. I'm not going to dismiss your email or have an assistant respond. So if you have any questions, follow-up questions, or if I can help in any way, please feel free to reach out.
Absolutely, will do. Rocky Harris, CEO of USA Triathlon. I appreciate you sharing some wonderful insight. And for those that would like to learn a little bit more about the Talk Shop programs, the information is right on your screen. I'm happy, just like Rocky is. I return all my emails too, direct. Well, because I'm only me. But anyhow, thanks again, Rocky, for taking the time, and we look forward to staying in touch.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you.